Welcome to Porch Play Chats, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. As part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats. These are conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. You can find all of these Porch Play Chats by going to our website at ipausa.org, and up in that top right-hand corner, become a subscriber on our YouTube channel and a friend on our Facebook page, and whatever you need to do on Instagram, because I'm old and I don't know. And then magically, every Monday, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. So joining me on the porch today is Dr. Charlene Woodham Brickman and Dr. Cathy Ramstetter. Both of these amazing people work together as consultants for successful, healthy children, offering one-on-one services, consulting, and coaching for professional or familial needs. They also provide in-person, hybrid, and virtual trainings and professional development. Together, Charlene and Cathy have a combined 70 years of experience in health, wellness, and education, and their work together on recess is grounded in their respective expertise in early childhood education and school health. And one of the things that makes these two absolutely amazing is that Charlene actually is the founder of Recess and Play in Athens, Georgia, and she's the director of the Little Athens Children's Museum Project. And Cathy was a co-author of the American Academy of Pediatrics policy on recess. And she's also a founding member of the Global Recess Alliance. So absolutely experts in this field, and someone that we really need to use their wisdom to help advocate for recess. So their topic today is, how do community members effectively advocate for recess post this crazy pandemic that we've been living through? So how do we do that?
All right, so that's a good question.
I think
what we need to, yeah, I think.
What do you think, Deb?
I think we need to just go into schools and take every child out and put them on the playground and say, I'm sorry, this is where they're going to be for the next hour. And when they're done, we'll let them come back into the classroom.
So that would be awesome if that were occurring. And I think we want to advocate for recess, but we would like to talk a little bit before that about the state of recess, particularly post-pandemic. And so this is where we are recording this now, November of 2022, going to be aired sometime in December. And you might be watching it in December, you might be watching it in 2023. So bearing in mind that when you watch this, we may be farther post-pandemic, we may still be in this weird place where we're still not really out of the COVID thing, but we're still in it. But we have gone back to schooling as normal, so to speak, this school year. And what we have seen, and we're hearing from schools, and what Charlene and I are hearing and seeing in person, is that eliminating or decreasing recess is very much occurring. And so schools that had it beforehand may or may not be reinstating it to its fullest capacity as it was before. And certainly those schools that didn't have it at all are not saying, hey, let's send the kids out to the playground for an hour. That's just unfortunately not occurring. And what you started with was, let's put them out on the playground for an hour. And if we could do that, the research clearly shows that unstructured play, interactions with peers, is the time and a way that children interpret their world, right? It's how they're going to heal from this absence of each other. And Charlene and I were talking about some of the reasons what schools give us as to why they are eliminating or reducing or not starting recess earlier today. And I'll let Charlene take that one because she said it really awesome. And I
won't say it the same way twice.
And I'm terrified that I know exactly what you're going to say. I'm terrified.
I'm sure you do.
Please don't let it be true.
Well, first of all, we want to say that, going back to what Cathy was just saying, the data is very sparse on this, unfortunately. Taking recess,
The part about taking away, not about the value.
correct, but the taking away post-pandemic is very sparse. It's known as a form of shadow discipline because it's reported. Teachers can just make that snap decision on the site and without having to go through the paperwork or the office. So the data is therefore very sparse, but anecdotally, we know it's occurring. We see it, we talk to stakeholders, we talk to our grandchildren, we know it's occurring. So why? Well, the answers we're getting from people, again, anecdotally, is that we've got to make up that academic learning loss.
Catch them up. Ugh.
Yeah.
Driving me crazy.
And I've heard several administrators literally say, we need butts in the seat to make up this academic time. It's like, no, that's not how we're going to do this. The other reason we anecdotally hear that people are reducing or eliminating it, or they're at least limiting their access to a quality recess post-pandemic, is because they are still in some form of COVID protocol. Some schools are still wearing masks. Some schools are still requiring social distancing, even on the playground. And so if they're doing that, they may still have the same minutes that they had pre-pandemic, but they're missing out on the quality recess. They're missing out on collaboration and negotiation and the whole social connection piece of that, which we know is the most important piece that children gain from recess, is that emotional learning and that time for social and emotional building. So these are very concerning factors, and we really need some hard data and some studies to follow this in this unique time. See, what those hard numbers are. But at the moment, it's all conversation.
So Charlene, the other one I hear from principals and superintendents is, they don't know how to work together anymore. So we can't, on the playground, we're having fights. And so that's why we're going to more structured activities if we do them at all. And I'm like, how are they supposed to learn to re-engage socially? Maybe they need more time to play together in order to overcome some of this stuff. It's driving me crazy.
And that's
the reality of that statement, Deb, is that we teach children to read when they come to school, teach them to add and subtract. How about we teach them to self-negotiate? How about we give them tools in their toolbox to go out there and be able to navigate this landscape? It's a novel idea, I know.
But I think that you're both speaking to the thing that what administrators and teachers and what we even when the Global Recess Alliance and we came together to update our statement, we updated it recently about the need for recess post-COVID, but we also did a commentary in the Journal of School Health that we'll dump into the chat here so that Deb, when you want this, you can share it with folks. But something that is this idea that kids don't know how to navigate is the idea of schooling loss, this loss of being in the school fabric, this loss of how school works. And we have children in schools now who are particularly our littles who didn't have the experience of school at all. I mean, they're coming into school in second grade and they've not been in a school setting where they learned the ropes, if you will. And so second grade teachers are looking at these kids going, well, why don't you know the rules of school without having the undercurrent of the implied rules? And the same could be said of kids who are in middle school, who are in 8th grade, for example, in a 6 through 8 building. They've not experienced middle school really until now. High schoolers, same thing. They're a sophomore or junior. They haven't been in high school. So we've got this loss of the experience, the socialization that occurs in schooling, coupled with the idea that for some reason, we forgot that we need to teach children how to push their chairs in, how to take their chairs out, how to say please and thank you, how to negotiate with each other, and how to advocate for themselves. Those were things that those social skills, those soft skills that got squelched before COVID, and now we have to pay more attention, be more mindful and attentive and explicit in teaching these behavioral skills, and then give them the opportunity to practice it without somebody telling them how to do it. Let them learn and practice those skills. That's the value of unstructured play, right? Whether you're 6 or you're 16, the value of engaging with your peers is to take something you saw and not the value of it, is what happens, what you saw, and you go in and try it out. It's how you're interpreting it. It's how you're learning it and owning it. And
so
I think
you bring up such a good point, because I have a stepchild who teaches middle school. And at the beginning of this year, when they were back full time, at the beginning of this year, he said, "Oh my God, I feel like I'm working," he teaches 7th grade. "I feel like I'm working with 4th graders." And,
You are.
we said, you pretty much are, socially and emotionally, because they've not been in school with those peers or like peers for 2 years. So you kind of are. And so you have to create opportunities in a classroom for children to socially engage with each other. And he's a wonderful, absolutely incredible teacher, and, does all sorts of role playing and social games and games to help teach history. I mean, he's absolutely incredible. But not all teachers are doing what he's doing. And so the disciplinary actions that are taking place for these poor kids have just gone off the charts. And if that's the research, what, and it's not the kids, it's what your expectations are. Right. And the lack of teaching them those soft skills. Wow.
That's all part of that umbrella of, as Cathy so eloquently says, this is her wheelhouse, is the whole concept of schooling itself. Yes, they lost academics. Yes, they lost, various pieces, but they also just lost that framework. And that's very difficult for middle schoolers middle school is a tyranny in itself.
Oh my God.
It's a tumultuous time. They don't know who they are. They're trying on a different persona every day. And on top of that, they missed this important foundational moment. And we haven't gone back in and scaffolded that. And now they're not even sure which set of clothes to put on, because they didn't know there was a wardrobe.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I was always a really good kid, right? Always a really good kid until middle school. And I turned into this crazy emotional. It was, my mother said, "I loved you, but boy, I didn't like you when you were."
Amen. Well, and that brings us, though, Cathy, to the next piece of this is that, yes, they lost academics. Yes, we all acknowledge they lost this academic time period, but that doesn't mean we can force feed them to catch them back up.
Right.
Got to be a slow process in that regard as well. We can't fast forward them to 2 years later and jump in there. We've got to make up what they lost academically, but they lost so much more in social connections and emotional well-being. And, the term hidden curriculum comes to mind. There's things that aren't in the explicit state objectives that they missed out on. From a middle school standpoint, that's very difficult for, I believe you said it was your stepson that's teaching at that middle school level. That's very difficult on any student. But think about our kindergartners that are entering this year. That, I here in Athens, Georgia, do some pop-up recess experiences, like a pop-up museum experience. And I've got 2- and 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds that have been kept at home by parents, grandparents, and coming to these play events, and they've never played with another child. Yeah. But yet these kids, I talked to a director the other day that said that, the first day of kindergarten, traditionally some kids cry, some kids don't. But the first day of kindergarten, every child cried this year. And she was, having to go back and look at this and think, wow, some of these kids haven't been to the grocery store in 3 years.
Right.
And yet we're dropping them off on the front doorstep like it's a normal first day of school, and there's bright colors in the room and there's lights and it's just this happy kindergarten atmosphere. And these kids are on
They're like,
overload.
yeah, they're like, what? Well, and the
Yeah.
other big piece I think is that when you think about middle school and high school, there are no social emotional standards in anywhere. And so if you say to teachers, you know, you need to be reteaching this stuff, that they're like, well, I don't have a standard that goes with that. I'm not even sure they know how. It's almost like we need, we need to give them the steps. Let's go back, because you know, some of the middle and secondary teachers never had child development, like birth to 8. They may have had adolescent development. Yeah, I mean, they haven't. It's not required in their degree. And so, you know, sometimes I think we need a step-by-step guide for them. You know, first day, you know, I always go back to I love the responsive classroom, but that's just my approach to classroom management. But it's almost like we have to give them a step-by-step guide on, here's some things to think about. Here's some things you can do, so that the classroom does operate more smoothly and does, and children are re-engaged in a community instead of, you know, with a screen. Oh,
Yes.
I really
So,
think that's what we need.
and that's one of the things that, you know, you started us off with, how do we advocate? But something that perhaps a community member can't advocate for, but those of us who are in education, and are particularly those of us who are able to connect with schools and talk about teacher preparation prior to coming into the teaching profession or doing professional development. And this is something that we really have to redesign professional development. And I think if in an ideal world, we would redesign teacher preparation programs.
Yes.
And particularly with this lens of what happens when kids miss out on schooling, and in the scheme of the way education is forever changed. It is forever changed because of the pandemic. And in the immediacy of it, we have to better prepare our educators, our paraprofessionals, and ideally our parents for what kids have experienced, what they experience with their peers, and how we can lift up these kids and have them be ready to learn while they're all healing and trying to manage this whole new world of school.
The whole new world. I mean, the whole new world of school. It is truly amazing to me that our expectations for them have remained the same. And all you hear about is our kids, you know, we failed our kids. No, we haven't failed our kids. What you're doing is failing our kids, right? It's not having recess. It's
present tense.
Yes, absolutely. It is having expectations for a grade level when they weren't in that grade physically, or if they were in that grade, they were 6 feet apart wearing masks. Oh my goodness. It's truly driving me crazy. It's driving me crazy that, and Mike Huber and I wrote an article in Exchange Every Day that was published, I think it was last July, that talked about this, that, you know, what we learned from the pandemic is not what you think we learned. And what children need is much different than what you're thinking children need. And so how do we do that? How do we get that message out? Because right now children are learning to hate school because of the way school is being done. And that's awful.
Right. Well, let me say that when we sign off from here, I'm going to send you a picture of my granddaughter. She co-presented for this conference at IPA USA last week. As a 10-year-old, I took her with me to speak as an expert on recess.
Yeah, there you go.
Why don't we let children speak as experts on the topic?
Why don't we?
her school is a struggling school district it was before pandemic and it certainly is now. But in her school, post-pandemic, they get 5 minutes recess a day. She's in the 4th grade, 5 minutes recess. They're not allowed to play on the playground equipment. They're told to run in a field, run off their energy, and come right back and line up with the teacher after the 5 minutes. My point is that prisoners get more time on the playground, on the yard than that. I said in the last chapter. But I found out since that her school no longer has an art or a music teacher.
Oh my God.
And came home from school last week and she had studied very hard for these 2 tests and she was very excited that she made an A on both tests, math and history. And I said, that's awesome. I said, your teacher already graded both tests. You already know your grade for both. And she goes, well, I looked on the computer. And I said, you took your test on the computer? And she said, no, she said, we have to take them on paper, but then we go to the computer and enter them on the computer and the computer tells us our grade.
Wow.
Wait.
And I'm just like, we are sanitizing this experience for these children in so very many ways. But that feedback from a teacher written on the paper is again a social emotional learning support.
Yes.
You know,
I mean, how are they supposed to know how to do better if you're not giving them the tools? Oh my goodness. You know, I hate technology, so we won't even go there. But I mean, it's how we use technology these days is ridiculous. And we're losing the teacher interaction and the teacher building of relationships because we're just putting them on a screen, just like we did in the pandemic when they didn't learn. And so I really don't know how to stop this madness, but it's madness.
Well, that's why we are advocating for community knowledge of these things, but then also the community teachers rallying to say we need more professional training. We need post-pandemic trauma-informed practices. These kids have PTSD in some cases. These kids had food scarcity. These kids were isolated. These kids did not have access to support systems. You know, some children experienced abuse in these times, and we need more trauma-informed practices at all ages and levels. And we've got to redesign PD in order to do that. What we're doing is not addressing that. And
no, we're not.
Still trying to put the same, you know, round peg in this, you know, same square peg in that same round hole. And we're going to have to redevelop the peg.
We need to start all over. We need to throw it out. You know, I always hate the phrase, throw the baby out with the bathwater, but really we need to get rid of whatever system we're currently in that has not worked for 22 years. And probably didn't work before then.
It didn't. And that's the whole thing.
Yes.
Education has needed to change for quite some time.
Yes.
And the pandemic made it shift very quickly. And my hope was that those shifts would transfer into true systemic changes. But instead, we've just gone kicking and screaming back to, we've got to get that old system back.
Yes.
Before. So we need change leaders. We need leaders that are willing to look at change and willing to look at what is best for the child. Period.
Well, and I think what is so frustrating is that there are models out there that have changed to be more responsive and appropriate instead of what we're currently dealing with.
But they're not widespread.
Yeah. So how do we lift up? How do we get, you know, and, you know, I always think we have to, even though the system needs to be changed from the ground up, we have to change the top system before people feel comfortable changing from the ground up, right? Because it was funny in the conversation I had with Jennifer before this, my child development class did Kohlberg's moral stages of development last week. And we had such rich conversations about the 6 different levels in Kohlberg. And I said, so, you know, the fourth level's like law and order, got to follow the rules, got to do this, got to do that. What if the rules aren't equitable? What if the rules don't promote equality? What if the rules are different based on who you are? And so then they did some research on people who had broken the rules and what happened to them. And, it's not good. They went to prison, they were arrested, they were killed. But, some of them, they persevered. And I said, so how do we get to those top two stages? What are you willing to do what's right, not necessarily what people think is right? And so it becomes this whole piece with the education system is, how do you do what's right and not what the rule is? And how do we break that? Because, we're just not reaching those top two levels of Kohlberg's moral stages of development because we refuse. We're afraid. I don't know. We're afraid of breaking the rule. I don't know. I don't know where it comes from, or we just think we have to do it instead of finding a way around it. When I taught kindergarten, the rule was you had to have your objectives up on the board every morning, right? What were the goal objectives for the day? My objectives were up there. And they were the objectives the school gave you. I didn't necessarily follow them all day, but they were up on the wall, on the board. They were over here on the side where no one had
Go ahead,
to.
Kathy.
I was just going to say we're going to get tight on time, and I don't want to leave this chat with this sense of foreboding and this sense that what we have, there's nothing good in it, and because for so many children, school is the safest place for them to be. That holds true, whether the system is really delivering on what it could be delivering. School is the
Thank you, Kathy.
best place for children to be. And that's true from the time you're 4 till you're 18. So as advocates for children's well-being and advocates for children's, and I'm including children up to 18, children's learning and children's schooling, we have to be part of a solution. We have to be coming with an attitude of gratitude for the fact that we live in this place where we actually have a public education system. And we have to be critical participants. And by that, I mean, not just criticizing, I mean, we have to look at it with a critically thinking about what is working and what is not. And pulling up ourselves at the table when we're not invited and just showing up and listening to what is currently happening, asking questions about what's currently happening, and maybe even asking the question, I love this is a Debbie Ray question, how's that working out for you? With Charlene question, how is what you're currently doing really helping you? You've got your objectives on the board there, Ms. Lawrence in kindergarten, but how is what you're doing? If I asked you the question, how is what you're doing getting you to those objectives? And you said to me, well, the objectives aren't developmentally appropriate. You would have to say, well, now what are we going to do about that? So how do we help the people who are living in the system, who have dedicated their lives and their professions to our children? They didn't go into teaching because they said, hey, I'm going to get rich, right? They went in because they want to take care of our children, and they wanted to give something to our communities. Let's help each other find that passion, and the common ground is the child.
Yes, it is the child.
It is the child. If we put the child at the center, which is where they are, and we make decisions which in the best interest of the child, no person would say to me, a child should sit in a desk for 7 hours. Not one person who's rationally thinking would say that's a good idea. So now we all agree that's a terrible idea. What are we going to do together?
What are we going to do about it? And I don't think it's the teachers in the classroom that are the issue. I think it's the teachers in the classroom who are oppressed by the system. Honestly,
I never thought of it that way, but that is very true.
It is. They're oppressed by the system. And, years ago at NAYC, I taught a session on lost opportunities, how teaching interferes with learning. And there were, I don't know, 350 people in the room. And the very first thing I said was, how many of you are preschool teachers, infant teachers, toddler teachers, kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers, second grade teachers? And there was 100 kindergarten, first and second grade teachers. And I said, okay, everybody close your eyes. And I said, how many of you think you harm children's development every day? And 85% of the room raised their hand.
Wow.
Because they're being oppressed by the system.
Wow.
Because it's what the system requires them to do.
And that's sad but true. I know from being in those, you know, foxholes, you know, and it's a sad statistic, but I would agree with that. I know we're close on time, so let me just that for anyone in the audience, I'm going to give a little plug here for a book, and that is The Playful Classroom by Drew Berry and Julie P. Jones. And it's a fabulously well-written book in a very conversational style that just pulls you into the whole concept of that playful classroom, playful recess, playful learning atmosphere, engaging, and talks about instilling not just curiosity, but wonder.
So I want you to give me, Charlene, the first name again, Julie P. Jones and
Jed, J-E-D.
Oh, Jed.
Druryberry.
Got it. Thank you.
And,
I know Jed.
Yeah. So, and they are currently close to release, I believe. If not, I've already released The Playful Life as well. And so, just another thought process in this is you're advocating for recess. You know, look at your own life, and if we're playing, we're more likely to advocate for play.
Yes, yes,
We're
I
locked
agree.
into that hamster wheel of life, we may not see it as a priority.
Yes, exactly. Well, oh my goodness, I can't believe we're already out of time. So to just stay right there. To learn more about Porch Play Chats, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And until next time, keep on playing.